you know. And so you really had to um, just be able to network and sort of scratch and claw and get into the industry any way you can. You guys have all the sort of tools at your disposal. And so we're trying to help facilitate that and make that even easier with the connections today. At the end of this, we're going to have a breakout session with Jason Surrell, Mel Mcgowan, if he can get in the room, and also Tom Morris. And just so that you guys can just have an opportunity to sort of press the flesh and, you know, be able to talk to some of these really super industry veterans. So with that said, let's talk about a couple things that you need to know about doing the student showcase. The entry portal is going to be starting tomorrow. So actually, let me talk about the different schools that we have represented. Currently, we have 13 teams and 25 different individuals represented. We have UCLA, a team, the Bruineers. I think there's actually 2 teams. I have to check on that. We've got Ringling College of Art and Design. Got Team Victoria from the UK, so that's Brunel University in London. I think I said that right. Oxford Brookes University, Southampton, Solent University, Stratfordshire University, University of Hertfordshire. You guys are killing me with the pronunciation. University of South Wales. Then, of course, we have SCAD from Savannah in Georgia, Ringling College of Art and Design down in Sarasota, the Ohio State University, University of Central Florida, and University of Antwerp. So a lot of good teams, and we look forward to a lot of good submissions coming up. So just to give a little plug about themed attraction, if you don't know about it, our goal is really twofold. One is to make it easy for companies in the industry to be able to cheaply distribute press releases and informations about their companies. We feel like there's a lot, you know, Disney has a really good, you know, easy outlet because they've got a lot of people writing about their stuff. But there's a lot of other great companies out there that don't necessarily have an easy, cheap way to get their information out there. So that's where themed attraction comes in to help companies sort of get their message out there. But then for students, and for newbies, our goal is to help you connect with folks. And with that said, we've assembled a team of veterans from the industry that are just available for you to ask questions right on the timeline there where it says start here, ask an Imagineer. You can click and just type your question, and hopefully we have industry veterans standing by just waiting to help you. So please take advantage of that. And I also want to give a shout out to Kira Prince. You have already, yes, she's turning red, but she's published a couple articles already and on themed attraction using the self-publish feature, and she's getting people noticing, hey, who is this girl? She's smart, she's well written, and she can put together something. And so people have been commenting, saying, who is this girl? And so, that's the sort of networking that you need to do in order, not that I want you all to jump on tomorrow and publish garbage, you know what I mean? But if you can put together a great, well thought out article, please do. Take advantage and help people notice who you are. That's part of it, and make friends, make network connections. Use that tool on themedattraction.com. So I just want to put that out to you. And if I can, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about how you're going to use this site. I need to share my screen here. And we're going to go right onto themedattraction.com. Can you all see this? Nod yes if you can. Okay. Basically, this is the homepage of themedattraction.com. And what you're going to do is, I think most of you already have a profile, but if you don't, you're going to click here, join us. And this is that self-publish feature. This is actually going to work for the showcase as well. So you're going to hit start here, and then or you can go onto profile. And when you do that, you can click on to blog, okay? And it says blog, that's just sort of the out-of-the-box name. We'd probably call it something else if we could. But essentially, when it goes to, or when it's time to create your submission, you're gonna hit this create button right here, okay? I'm gonna show you another way to do it in a minute. And I think the important thing to emphasize is that you guys are not supposed to be web designers. I just recently sold a web development company that I had for going on 20 years. So I'm going to make my information available to you so that all you really need to do is send me your information and I'll help you submit this. But I want to sort of give you a little bit of a guidance so that you can do this on your own. Okay. So what you're going to do is, this is a fake account I've created here. You hit blog create, and then it brings up this draft here. So what you're going to do is you're going to type the project name, so the Ferris wheel or whatever it is, and then you're going to add your team name afterwards. So, or actually, I'm sorry, it'll be your university. So we'll say it's UCF, and that way everyone kind of knows where you're from. So right here, this is just basic WordPress. If you click here, you're getting basically a web page where you can format it. And if you hit full screen, you can do full screen. If you want a little bit more information, you can do some paragraph indents. You can do some meta tags, things like that. This right here, if you click the text, will allow you to embed code. So the idea is you're going to insert a YouTube video. You can use the embed feature. Just talk to me if you need help with that. And that will allow you to talk through your submission. This add media button here is where you're going to basically add a photo. So, here's a picture of the TEA. I can just go ahead and add that, and it will add to your document. There it is right there. So it's very simple, left, center, right, justify. You can click and you can make it larger. And that's basically all it is. So you're going to add all of your documents here. You can use me to help you make it look pretty. And then you can also type any text that you want. Okay. So that would go, right in here. And so it's really kind of a simple HTML web page that you have, simple on purpose. So the idea is to display your documents. If you have some other place where you want to put your links in, you can absolutely do that. Again, it will accept HTML. You just have to use the text button, toggle it back and forth to make it look like what you want it to look like. So there's the code, and there is the visuals. One of the things you're going to want to do is you can hit tags, which is not really that important. That's sort of like keywords. The more important thing to do, though, is hit featured image. And that's what people will see when they see your page. That's the first thing they'll see, your first impression. So featured image should be about 600 by 600 pixels. You can make it larger, but just keep in mind that load time, we want to respect everyone's load time. So, no more than about 8 or 1200 pixels wide. And that should be your featured image there. And then from there, what you're going to do is you're going to put your student showcase, your category. Okay. So you're going to either mark that you're a team or you're an individual, and that's going to land, it's going to determine where it falls on the page. Okay. So that's how that works. And typically, if you want it to display, you're going to hit publish. Okay, publish article. If you don't want it to display and you want to work on it for several days, you definitely want to hit save draft. Okay, so if you hit publish, everyone in the whole world is going to see that. So maybe you want to do that. Say, hey, we've got a great project and we're going to, do some bragging rights now, or maybe you want to save it for later. You have about a 30-day window to starting tomorrow, and then the judging will start on the 1st. Now, let me get back to you. If you need to edit at a later date, even if you've published it, what you're going to do is you're going to add /wp-admin. Okay, that's standard WordPress terminology. The rest of this stuff over here doesn't matter. This stuff doesn't matter. But if you click on post, you can see all posts. I've got one sample post in here. You literally just click edit, and that takes you into the WordPress backend editor. And so you can go in there and you can change some things about your documents right there. So this is a previous, the UCF press release that we used just for a sample today. So there's some other features that you can add in here, but most of it's not important. Most important thing is that you add your text here, and then you add your featured image down here on the lower right, and then add the proper category, and then click the blue update button and wait till it's finished updating. Again, if you have a video and you want to display it, feel free to Dropbox that to me. My email is really easy. It's nate@aimedattraction.com. And that's pretty much it for this part of it. So hopefully that will go relatively smoothly. And you'll see, if we go to the homepage of Themed Attraction, you will see right here front and center where the rules currently are. That's going to be replaced to with your student showcase page. So that's where the all the information is going to be populated. We'll move the rules to a different location coming up. Okay, so that is opening starting tomorrow. Feel free to reach out to me. I'll give you my cell phone if you need it. It's on the bottom of the email invite I sent out as well. So I'm not going to do it here just because we're recording this, but that is freely available. And so feel free to reach out to me. If you're overseas and you want to do a Zoom call, feel free also, and I will help you with that. Okay, so I'm going to actually end my share. So we're back to the main room. And now what I'd like to do is actually introduce our judges. We have a really good panel of judges. The reason we're doing the judges is twofold. One is that they have some really good industry experience, but then also they're, I actually reached out to some of you and you said, hey, where do you want to work? And so some of the companies are represented in where you may want to be employed at some point after your college days are over. So with that said, the first person I'd like to talk about is Theron Skees, is our first judge of 9. Theron, you want to get on and say a little hello and quickly talk about your career and what you've done, who you are.
Great. Say a little hello. So it's a little hello to everybody. I'm super happy that we have some folks from the UK joining. That is incredible, working hard to reach out to many folks in the UK. I know that you don't have access to as many educational opportunities in the themed entertainment world. So super happy that you're on. My name's Theron. I have spent about 30 years in themed entertainment. The last 23 was as an Imagineer. Spent quite a bit of time doing all kinds of fun stuff in attractions and theme parks, RD&E, hotels, and my last project right before I got laid off in December was with the Disney Cruise Line. So what I think is really cool and what I share with students and young professionals alike is that the process that we use is so consistent how we tell stories and build experiences that connect with guests, that it can be applied in all of these different mechanisms, all these different mediums, if you will. So I think that's really going to be fun, and I'm really excited to see everything that you're going to come up with. Thanks for the invitation to be here.
Okay. So if you've seen Disney Springs down in at Disney World, Theron was directly responsible for that, and also worked on Tower of Terror, which I love and hate at the same time. Next judge, I'm just going in no particular order. It's Mel Mcgowan. He is the Chief Creative Officer of Storyland Studios, and he's also the co-host of the podcast. He got held up a little bit. Freddie, do you want to say something about Mel real fast?
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Not to put you on the spot, but you are a Jungle Cruise skipper. Come on.
Yeah. Can you hear me? You can hear me. Okay. Mel is the Chief Creative Officer at Storyland Studios. He spent the better part of a decade with the Walt Disney Company, was instrumental part of the team that put the Grand Californian and Downtown Disney in that empty parking lot that used to be outside of Disneyland, and creating sort of a paradise, a garden in the city, as they like to call it. Since then, he and his brother formed several studios along the way, creating places that you can walk into and enjoy, and kind of the keyword that they like to use is places that lift the spirit. And so that'll show up in anywhere from theme parks to shopping centers and churches, and just so many different cool projects that they get to work on. So I'm not Mel, but that's what he does.
That's great. All right, next person is Jason Sorrell. Jason.
Hey, everybody. I've spent 30 years now working for one of the big two in the industry, Universal and Disney. And I got caught up in the layoffs last fall, but I landed a couple months ago with Mel and Freddie at Storyland Studios as executive creative director. So my career has been almost evenly divided between live entertainment and attractions development. and at Imagineering in particular, working on everything from shops and restaurants to hotels and cruise ships and nightclubs, and you name it, we did it. And most recently, I was the creative director for Universal Studios Beijing, which opens in a couple months, God willing. And for about 1.5 years was the creative director of Epic Universe. So, but I'm excited about the future with Mel and Freddie. We got a lot of great stuff happening, and future looks bright.
Yep, fantastic. He was also a Jungle Cruise skipper, as the best ones all are, including myself. I think you worked on Bill and Ted's show, correct? The original one.
Yeah, when I in one of my earliest credits was helping to create what would become the juggernaut of Halloween Horror Nights, and one of my projects there was Bill and Ted's Excellent Halloween Adventure. So had a great time with that. It was really wound up being really popular, and got to create the formula that they would use for the next 20 some years of the show. So a lot of fun.
Which I love that show. I had to give a plug to that. So, okay, MK Haley. Sorry, I said your name wrong. MK Haley. It's really great to see you, and we're really like-minded. We had a great conversation a couple weeks ago, and why don't you talk about yourself?
I've never been a Jungle Cruise skipper, so that's still on my to-do list, I guess. I was at Imagineering for 27 years, mostly in R&D, and throughout that time, Disney let me / made me teach as well. You know, there's not a lot of history of teaching themed entertainment, the individual bits and pieces. So I've taught at a lot of really great universities. I'm currently now teaching themed entertainment design at UT Austin, where they have a really great collaborative mindset in terms of engineers and artists and theater all working together. I may be teaching a class in putt-putt golf course design this fall. Super excited about that. And also one of the things that has been pretty clear is there's not a lot of information out there about how to get into this industry if you've wanted. So I've also spent a lot of time over the years putting together, I call them big old ugly resources, but just for anyone interested, this is my big giant ugly Google Doc of awesome things. I also have a Twitter stream of themed entertainment news. The article that Nathan posted today was one that I reshared today. So I'm very vested in helping connect people with opportunities in the industry, and also letting them know how big and wide the industry is. It's museums and aquariums and haunted houses and big theme parks and little attractions. So I am at your service for anyone who wants to look at big ugly Google Docs of things.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, MK. We're really happy. And by the way, I said, hey, would you like to help us in judging this? And she said, heck yeah, that was, so she definitely has a heart for you guys. And we're really happy to have MK here.
Yeah, for many, many years, I ran the Imagination student design competition at Imagineering. So I've got a lot of history on best practices and these sorts of experiences.
Fantastic. Tom Morris is next. Tom, you want to introduce yourself and say a couple things? Oh, your volume is still muted. Still muted. Can we figure it out? You want me to go on to the next person and then come back? All right, I'll tell you what, we're gonna move on. Yep. And then I think lower right-hand corner of the windows typically, well, you might be on a Mac for all I know. So if you can work on that, we would love to hear from you. So Peter Cliff, are you here? We'll come back to you in just a minute here, Tom. I am
here.
Oh, excellent. Okay, Peter. Peter is from Hollivis. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Great. Yeah, nice to meet everyone. I think I might be the British representative of this judging panel. So whoop, whoop, or European. I still class myself as European. Yeah, so I'm 16 years in the industry. I started with Merlin as a performer, and then kind of like dug my way up. Ended up with Merlin as the global director of live shows and entertainment, and then I'm now creative director for Hollivis. If you have not heard of Hollivis before, we kind of specialize in next generational technologies. So biometric tracking, AV, complex projection, media-based ride systems. And we deliver to all of the industries that have kind of been mentioned prior to this. So a lot of work in themed entertainment with some of the big companies that have also been mentioned, but also museums, cultural destinations, and general experiential as well. So yeah, nice to meet you all.
Great, thank you. Fantastic. We have another representative from England as well, so we'll get to him in a little bit. Next one is Anaheta. Are you with us? I think you are. I saw you earlier.
Hi, I'm Anahita. Anna hit to break it down, but the emphasis is usually on the second A. It's a complicated name. It's okay. As long as you don't call me Anna, I'll probably respond to you. I am probably the least experienced on this panel of judges, so thank you so much for having me, and I'm really excited to be here. I just graduated from USC the last May, and unlike everyone over here who seems to have both Jungle Cruise experience and imagining experience, Pete, I appreciate you for breaking that trend before me. I'm actually on the startup route, which is very interesting and very unusual in the themed entertainment industry. I've been working on projects with immersive and themed entertainment bent since I was 16. So it's been about 7 years now. And I've been leading teams of 5 to 120, depending on phase of production, by usually stealing a lot of money from schools and universities that I'm a part of to do independent projects. I specialize in the intersection of more immersive and themed entertainment, focusing on the idea of agency and how can we give agency to large audiences in a way that they actually matter within an unfolding story. And I was planning to do a huge event at Clifton's Republic in downtown LA, which is one of the inspirations of Disneyland until COVID hit, but we're restarting that project now, which I'm excited about. And I'm currently working on a spy themed media literacy transmedia experience.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Next person is Louis Alfieri. He is actually in a meeting right now. He messaged me and he said he could not be with us. He's the Chief Creative Officer of Ravensun Creative. And what he, I worked with him at Universal Creative a lot on a few different projects. So he'll be one of the judges. He worked on Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket. He just finished Hershey's Cup Fusion at Hershey Park. He was the art director / project manager on the Transformers ride. And I know there's a whole laundry list of things, but he is also a very wonderful person in terms of willing to help out students. So, reach out to him individually, reach out to him on themedattraction.com, and he has expressed his interest in helping out. So if you have questions, by all means, please, reach out to him. He'll be one of those folks judging your competition. I should say showcase. The competition is a bad name, right? But Tom, are you available now? Did you get your sound working?
Yes. Sorry about that.
Excellent.
Yeah, the batteries went out on the mouse at the
Oh,
perfect time, right? Anyway, well, do you have a minute or do you have 30 minutes? I will briefly go through. I started at the tender age of 19 at, it was called WED back then, WDI now. And I was also a ride operator at Disneyland, but unfortunately I was not a Jungle Cruise skipper, although that has been on my bucket list. And if it weren't for the pandemic, I was going to anonymously apply for a job at Disneyland last summer and be a Jungle Cruise skipper.
Absolutely. Do it.
Yeah,
next summer. I'm with you.
Yeah, it'll probably be 2022 now before I do that. But and my dad was briefly a Jungle Cruise skipper. He was a ride operator for a couple seasons. He was a high school teacher, but like high school teachers did back then, they worked at Disneyland during the off time. Anyway, well, I worked on a whole bunch of different projects all the way up through Cars Land at Disneyland, and then worked on a whole bunch of really interesting things that haven't been made yet, let's say, kind of, very blue sky projects the last 3 or 4 years that I was there. Worked on everything from Epcot, Journey into Imagination, Star Tours at Disneyland, conceived Rock and Roller Coaster, Didn't work on it all the way through, but I came up with the idea after doing all sorts of onboard audio tests back in the 80s. And then worked on Disneyland Paris. I was the show producer for Fantasyland, and I designed the castle there. And then was selected to work on Disney Quest with Joe D'Annunzio, helped conceive that, and was the creative overall director for Hong Kong Disneyland. So that, I guess, is the short version.
Well, you're not a Jungle Cruise skipper, but other than that, you know.
Right, and I am retired. I want to point that out because on the schedule that I saw there, it said it looked like I was still at WDI, but I left WDI 4 years ago, and 40 years in the theme park industry, starting at in my teens, was a good run. So I'm on to other things now, but I still keep a very close, finger on the pulse of the themed industry, and I'm writing a book now.
Excellent. And Jason, Tom has graciously offered to stay for one of our breakout sessions afterwards and answer all of your questions. And Jason as well Jason Sorrell is going to do that. So special treat today at the end of this. So thank you, Tom, in advance, and Jason, and anyone else who wants to participate. All right, and lastly but not least, Thomas Kelly from Scruffy Dog Creative Group in England.
Hey, can you hear me?
We can.
Great, cool. Yeah, so I'm Thomas Kelly. As you can hear from my accent, I'm actually not British. I'm actually grew up in Texas, but my dad's from Ireland. So I had that kind of nice connection there. I'm an alumnus of Carnegie Mellon University. I have a background in scenic design and architecture. And I've had the pleasure of working on a lot of really great projects with a lot of great people in the industry. So one of which was Epic Universe down in Florida. I also worked on Fox World Dubai while I was in California. But most recently, I'm working at Scruffy Dog Creative Group here in London. We have a bunch of locations around the globe, but I work here as a creative art director. And so we design museums and theme parks and attractions all over Europe, but also in Asia and the Middle East. So I'm working on a lot of projects that are unnamed over there at the moment. But the most recent things that have opened is the World of Wine Museum in Porto, Portugal. So I was one of the art directors on that. And another project that is soon to open up in Manchester called I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here Jungle Challenge, which it's a family entertainment center. Other than that, yeah, I just moved over here for the history as well. I'm a huge history fan. So it's, anybody that's been over to Europe and lived in Europe and having grown up in America, the amount of history here is just, it's immense. So it's been great to be here and work with so many great people here in Europe. So that's me.
Oops, sorry, I'm muted. Fantastic. Well, that wraps up the end of my content. So thanks for listening. Again, if you have questions about how to submit, it's nate@themedattraction.com. I don't want anyone to put out something that you're not happy with. And again, it's not a web design competition. It's, let's help I will help you get your documents looking relatively good so that they can be judged thoroughly. So I'll turn it back over to Morgan.
Wonderful. That was incredible. What a great cast. Okay, so let's take a second to talk about the scoring rubric for the judges and the students. Jesse, would you like to introduce yourself and talk a little bit more about what we can expect with regards to all the scoring for this?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, everyone. I'm Jesse Cam. I'm a builder, contractor, engineering manager, developer, money guy. Cut my teeth while I was in school building projects for Odds of Adventure. And I'm here to tell you guys that even if you don't get a job with the big two, there's a lot of other ways that you can be involved in this industry and still be part of these awesome projects. So with that, I will share my screen. What I've done is I've created a Qualtrics survey link that I will be sharing out. And can you see the white screen now? Is that the one that you see? All right, good. I have 3 or 4 different monitors here. So For the judges, the first piece is a kind of an overview of what we were looking for when we created this competition, or showcase rather. And really, it's not a competition because we want to highlight the specific attributes of the specific programs of the university, because we might have students in programs who do engineering really well, but they lack in maybe narrative telling, storytelling, placemaking, or we may have the opposite, where we have a lot of creative people from like SCAD or Ringling who are going to be focused on conceptual design. And we really want to capture that so that we can brag about you guys, and we can brag about the faculty and the programs itself on themeattraction.com. And then you guys can take that back as faculty, for the faculty that are on here, and argue for tenure and promotion and CV lines and things like that. So it's a really great way for the faculty and the students and industry to all connect in ways that I hope is new and is unique to this industry. So there's a little bit of narrative right there for the judges, and then the judge will indicate which submission right here that they're going to be judging. So the name should match the name that was submitted on themeattraction.com. And then this is the key piece of the scoring here, really super simple and broad, because we're going to see a lot of different submissions, I hope. And each one of these is a drop down, scoring from 1 to 5, weak or exceptional, and everywhere in between for these specific 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 categories. This pretty much wraps up at a high level what all themed attraction and entertainment projects will have, from the blue sky all the way to the actual project management and engineering and finance piece, and even the hospitality management if we have any of those submitted. And then there's 3 rankings of an award category and a couple of different subsets. And so what I've asked the judges to do is to recommend what awards they think this submission is eligible for. So the top level would be a best in show, and it's the best submission that we've seen of this bunch. And then we have the next level would be best in class, and that is broken down into other subcategories that kind of match the programs of all of the TEAAS groups that I've seen on that symposium group. And then kind of a third tier, if a project sticks out that has something that's just exceptional and it just shines in this one particular area, but maybe isn't the best one, we have a whole bunch of honorable mentions. And then lastly, if I've missed anything that the judges think is more applicable to this particular submission than others, I've got a blank here. And then there's a section that they can add some feedback, candid feedback, to highlight both strengths and maybe some weaknesses that they can encourage the students to maybe beef up on when they get into industry. Just as they please. It's optional section that they can add as much or as little insight into the project as they want. So pretty simple. And hopefully they can do it right from the iPhones over here on the right. You see that's kind of a tablet phone example, or you can do it on a live link through the internet. And hopefully it's just a few minutes per submission, because we have quite a few submissions and I want to respect the judges' times. So they're not spending an hour on each submission, you know.
Awesome. Oh, wait, were you still going? You're still sharing your screen. I don't want to cut you off, but I just...
No, I'm done. I'll go ahead and unshare.
Awesome.
I can figure out how.
I can stop that for you. I just didn't want to cut you. Okay. Thank you so much. Fantastic. Well, I think we're going to spend the rest of our time here in a couple of breakout rooms. So the way that this is going to work, first off, I would love it if you haven't already. I've seen that a bunch of you have. Make sure that your name is correct on your little black square. And if you would please make sure that you either, if you're a judge, mark that you're a judge. If you're not, if you're a student participating, let us know where you're participating from. Put your school on there. I see a couple of you guys have already done that. That's fantastic. So we're going to, we had a couple of small changes here. So Nathan and Christian here, make sure that I'm correct. We've got the fantastic Tom Morris, and we're going to have Freddie Martin in one group here, and then we will have Mel Mcgowan and Jason in another, but we don't have Mel. So how are we?
Yeah,
we're gonna have...
I think this actually may work out well, because it just so happens that Theron is, when you get Theron in the room with Jason, they have a lot to talk about, and they're great friends. And Theron has graciously agreed to help Q&A with Theron. And so they will be in the second room, or the main
You
room.
guys probably didn't know this, but
So we'll
we
keep
have
them in
our
the
own,
main.
so it works really well.
And then as well, MK, you're going to be joining with that.
Yes.
That's a winning combination right there. So you guys will be staying in the main room, and then we'll just make a separate breakout room. And hopefully you'll be able to see the prompt on your screen. So go back to your Zoom window if you've minimized it. We'll set that up in just a sec here, and you'll be able to have the autonomy to click in and out of those. So if you want to ask a question, you're not going to need to just write it in the chat and then it's going to get filtered. Just ask your question. Or Nathan, do you want to call everybody back after a certain time, or will we just call it in 20?
I think what we'll do is we'll go, it's 3:40 right now, Eastern time. So we can just, go until maybe 5 after the hour. So, 20, 25 minutes of Q&A. If you guys want to continue, then you're more than welcome, but we want to respect everyone's time.
So Nathan, before we jump off, can we see if there's any questions on submission or judging or any of?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that, actually.
Just take 5 seconds here and see if anybody has any questions.
No one?
I have a question. I was wondering whether you can edit a post after you've published it.
Yes, you can. And so the answer to that, am I unmuted? I lost my controls. Basically, yes. If you go to WP, that'll be themedattraction.com/WP-admin, then what you'll do is you'll log in with your profile. You may, by the way, may want to create a team profile just so that it looks like it's coming from a team and not a person. But you'll just click on posts, and then from there you can click edit. And I'll be available to help you. So just let me know.
We've got a couple more questions popping up here. We've got Reed, Kira, then Brielle, just so you know your order there. I didn't want to cut you off. What was that? Was that Jesse?
So one helpful hint that I have when I post on themedattraction.com is I put all the documents in a Word document format first, and then just copy and paste in one big drop. Sometimes it's easier to format in Word and then just correct the formatting on the WordPress platform.
Yeah, and just know that Word will bring in some extra code, so it can add a few extra spaces. So make sure you're comfortable with how it looks before you, submit. And the other thing is that Theme Attraction will auto-publish your post to the social networks. So make sure that you are very careful and you're happy with what you want to do before you hit submit.
Yeah, I've made that mistake.
Yeah, but you can always fix it.
Like we know it's Freddie.
More questions?
Yes, we have Reed next. We've got a couple more popping up here. So it was Reed, then Kira, then Brielle, and now we have Jamie and Jaway as well. So
yeah,
go ahead, Reed.
I wanted to ask, I think it was something you mentioned before, but like the architecture and engineering, if our curriculum didn't touch that within the class, that is scored as a 0, or it's not graded, or it's not looked at.
So the judges will still give it a ranking between 1 and 5, but you should not take it as a negative because it's going to highlight the exceptional pieces of your work based on whatever your particular program highlights. Because obviously engineers have pretty much 0 storytelling experience, really good with math, but horrible with English. So theirs would be scoring high on technical, whereas somebody else's might do the opposite. So don't worry about it as like a grade. Look at it as highlighting what you're really, really good at.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Okay, more questions?
Yes, Brielle, you were next in line there. Or no, I'm sorry, it was Kira. Kira, you were right before Brielle. Go ahead.
Hi, when we're creating the submission page, I know WordPress does, I don't think WordPress always has native support for PDFs, but does the theme attraction site support uploading PDFs?
It's not going to display a PDF like a PDF. What it'll do is you can click add media and it'll display it like it's an image. So you can then basically click on that and then it pulls it open. So if you have important text that you want to, say, you should probably copy and paste that directly in. If you have some pretty documents that are in PDF, you can absolutely upload those and just have them as supporting documents and people can click on those. So
okay, thank you.
It's really your choice. But yeah, it will take that. You click media and then add new and you just literally can drag it, or you can click the upload and find the document and hit submit.
Wonderful. Now, Brielle, you're up.
Perfect, thank you. So for our deliverables, it's the 8 to 12 minute video. Did you want other documents kind of outlining design process or specific design things, or is it all incorporated in that video? Just because I'm a little confused because you keep mentioning documents in the WordPress. And so I'm a little confused on what exactly the deliverables are.
So yeah, each class, and Jesse can probably speak to this, but each class, each program is going to be a little bit different. Some of that is the coursework for that program. And so it's basically whatever that it takes for you to communicate your message. Remember, we're doing professional development. So if you can do it all in a video, by all means. But if you have a beautiful rendering, it's just not going to come through in a YouTube video, probably. So, or an MP4, whatever you want to, whatever format. So use whatever communication technique you can use to your advantage to help tell your story of this attraction. Remember that you're trying to sort of give your elevator pitch to somebody who has no idea what it is. And that's some of that communication skill is what you're going to have to do in your career when you walk into a room and you have to sell somebody on what your project is in 10 minutes or less. So think about it that way. And so the answer is a very broad, do it however you want to, but it needs to work, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Welcome.
So I think to keep ourselves on track here, we'll take 2 more questions because I know Jamie and Joey, you both had your hands up earlier on. For those of you who have outstanding questions, what I'd like you to do is please write them in the chat. I'll log them and then Jesse can go through and answer them after. Is that okay with you, Jesse?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Perfect. Wonderful. Okay. Jamie, you were next. Go ahead.
Sorry, thank you very much. Just follow up. I think Brielle asked most of my question, and I guess I probably have most of the answer. We've been moving forward under the assumption that the video is a required deliverable. Is a video required?
I think the video is most optimal. I would hesitate to say required, but I think to make it easier on the judges, just like real life, when you would walk in and pitch a concept, you might have renderings, but you're definitely going to be talking. You're definitely going to be standing in front of somebody and trying to verbally explain what you're trying to do or build. So I would highly encourage, maybe not require, but highly encourage a video, and then supplemental documents that would just booster what you're talking about as attachments, or if you're able to edit it into the video, would be fantastic too.
That's excellent. That totally fits what we were thinking. But most of our content is in presentation format, like a pitch deck. And so we'll probably make videos of the pitch decks and pitch them and also upload the decks so you can read them at your own pace. Thank you.
I think that's perfect.
Great, thanks.
So next, my question is can we use like an existing IP and create stories around it? Or we have to create our own IP and character, like just brand new stuff?
That's a question for Jesse, I think.
I'm sorry, say it again.
So I'm asking if we can use like existing IP, like for example, like Batman or Rick and Morty, and create story and theme park around it. Or do we have to like create a new IP and new characters?
I don't think you should include useful IP that's already out there. I would encourage you to create fiction unless you're trying to build a ride or something that might go around that. You get stickiness if you include somebody else's IP, even as a student. There's ownership of the work that you do as a student with the university. So it's not yours to begin with as a student if you're in a class enrolled, but What happens when a judge sits on a panel who has IP that's out there? They need to be protected from that if they ever have a concept that's out there, even remotely similar to yours, and vice versa. If you ever wanted your IP idea to hit the mainstream, it's never going to once it's been submitted through something like this. So I would highly discourage the use of existing IP if you can.
I just feel that it's easier for people to know the story of an existing IP. So I just want to showcase like what I can do around that existing base. So I guess that's a no, right?
So it's not going to be excluded. I just think you'll see some hesitation from the judges and some of that.
Okay, I see. Thanks.
Wonderful. And just, I put it in the chat, but if you all have any other questions, please just either send them to me privately or put them in the chat. I will make sure that they get onto a little list here, and then we'll respond to the rest of them later and send them out. So don't worry if you don't, your question wasn't answered, you'll still get everything figured out. Okay, let's move on. We've got a couple minutes here. So we're going to ask, let's see, who was staying behind? We have MK and Jason and Theron. If you could stay behind, this is going to be one breakout room. And the rest of you will be able to go to the other breakout room where we will have, well, Mel's not here, so it'll be Freddie. Freddie, who's joining you over there?
Tom Morris.
And Tom, fantastic, cool. Okay, how do you decide? My goodness. Well, the choice is yours. Christian, were you the one who set up these breakout rooms here? It should be good to go. Does everyone see the ability to move into those breakout rooms yet?
There should be one breakout room, so you should have the ability to go to that breakout room if you would like to.
And then, okay, perfect. Can I get some thumbs up from folks if you can see that in your Zoom? Just want to make sure. Okay, fantastic. Wonderful. Well, stay in the main room if you want to meet with MK and Theron and Jason. And with Freddie and Tom, you will both go to the other room. And anyone else who wants to see and talk to them will go to that room with them, okay? All right, thanks all.
I don't see the other room. I'm sorry.
Should be on the bottom of the screen. It should say breakout room with the little quadrant thing.
Looks like it's moving.
It is working. You have to click the join button next to the room 1, for example.
Okay, and since this is going to be acting as one of the rooms, why don't we just start? So, folks who have questions, I'm not here to wrangle your questions, so go ahead. Unmute yourselves and ask away. We've got some fantastic folks here. Though, Tom, have you found you haven't found your button yet?
I found the button. It just says room 1.
Yes, that's where you want to go.
And then to the right, it says join. Can you see it all the way to the right?
No.
I should be able to move you to it. Let me get you there manually. Hold on. I'm going to assign you to room 1. There you go. You should be able to click on something now. He's gone. All right, folks.
That's what modern teleportation looks like, people.
And by the way, the questions here really are not intended to be about the competition at this point, the showcase. Sorry, I keep misnaming it, but yeah, it's really just about the career and just their experiences and asking wisdom from them. So,
if I could say the opposite of kind of what Jesse said, I'm going to go in the camp of never, ever, ever, ever use IP you don't have the right to, ever. In the history of the universe, no major studio is going to sue you or make you take it down. But as Jesse had mentioned, many of the judges can't look at it. They will have to close your portfolio and hand it back. And you don't want that to happen. You want your best work to be shown. So just don't even wade into that water. It's too dicey. Use your own content.
But I had school projects where like I could use, like, for example.
Correct. And we can often, only speaking for the Walt Disney Company, we shut SCAD portfolios and hand them back all the time. You do
Oh.
not have the right. I don't want to watch, I can't look at a Scooby-Doo haunted house. You don't have the right to that. I can't look at a Disney haunted house. And we've had that conversation with faculty. And each studio has its own policy, but it's just very dangerous. So if you can avoid it, don't.
But I could do like a Snow White, right? Like the traditional fairy tale.
Right, as
Right,
long as it's the one
right.
that's in the public domain.
Okay.
And Brielle had asked for clarification, if we upload our own IP to this showcase, we'll no longer have complete access to it. I mean, Nathan can answer that, but I don't think this competition is taking any of your rights away. Your university may have claims to your IP, but I don't believe this competition is taking your rights away.
We have no interest in it. This is something Nathan and I has talked about. This is solely about the students, so they retain their IP as much as they would retain it within their own university. But like you said, when I was an engineering student, I was surprised that if I had a patent through like senior design stuff, which I was encouraged to do, I would not own that patent. The university would have it, and I would get a certain agreement to go along with that. And that was true of my PhD work as well. I didn't actually, my name is on it, but I don't own it as part of the university's work because it was part of the student conduct agreement that I signed and that you guys sign when you enroll in programs. And each one of those is different. So
And so ask your university. The entry into the showcase is giving the showcase permission to show your work, right? But they have no ownership over it.
and I believe there's language in the users that you would that you indemnify the judges as well, so that they have the freedom to see it and to look at it and for us to publish it. And that if anything ever in the future somehow comes close and you think might be somehow related, that you've already sort of waived that right to that. But those are far and few between, in my opinion. And it's kind of funny because it's a mixed bag. Because if you don't get your ideas out and you don't show it to people, then nobody ever sees it. And this kind of format, you might get the right eyes to see it, who might see talent that you've got hidden away. And with a couple of key financiers and people to push it forward, it might actually see the light of day into a built environment versus just sitting in a portfolio someplace. So it's definitely encouraged. And I think that the IP concern is minimized.
Yeah, our like designs are not for a like school project. They're kind of an outside, kind of guided by mentors in our program and like outside kind of sources and our professors, but it's not specifically for any school projects. So we were going to try to kind of take it further. So that's only why I ask about IP with this specifically, because it's not necessarily tied with the school at the moment. So thank you for that information.
So if it's really good, we want to showcase it on themeattraction.com and have you share it with the folks at the IAPA TEAAS as well. But you can also view that as a public notice, sort of like a copyright. It's a time-stamped publishing of that if you ever needed to, you can go back and say, see, I had this idea and I did this thing and it was on the public site on this date. And if you ever had to in a lawsuit, which is highly unlikely, you would have that in the back.
So you want to look at this showcase as a twofer. You have two amazing opportunities. One is to showcase your technical proficiency. Are you a good whatever? Are you a good artist, modeler, animator, storyteller? The other is creative innovation. And you can do either or both, but understanding that it is two separate things. If you're just a phenomenal illustrator, that's super useful. And don't worry about, is it an original story? What's the IP? Great illustration is great illustration. And then there's another track, which is original creative work.
Can I throw something else out too? Because I do mentor and teach at SCAD and Ringling a bit. And one of the things that I do see, and I actually tell students a lot, is that a story is not necessarily that this person was born here and did this in their life and created this, and it's so cool, and that's why you want to come. Right? A story actually engages the audience in a very special way. It creates a way for the audience to engage. So I would definitely say you have to include that a way that the audience, what's the role that they play? What's going to encourage me to come in? Why do I want to participate in this? That's one. And then two, you don't have to have an ROI, return on investment. You don't have to have how many guests per hour are going to go through, none of that stuff. But please, please look at your creation with at least a little bit of a lens from a business perspective, right? Understand some of those things just from a business perspective. Seen a lot of attraction ideas that 5 people could walk through an hour, right? Cool, really fun, but nobody's going to put it in their park anywhere, right? So just try to keep those 2 things. There's probably a million other things, but those are the things, at least in what I've seen, that come up the most frequent. And I think it'll deliver a much better final product of what you're pitching.
And you're lucky enough to have some of the world's best here. Jason, for example, he's done story across dark rides, iron rides, and live entertainment. So take advantage of the mentors you have and reach out to them. Or if you're looking for expertise that this group doesn't represent, ask us. We have friends. We can connect you.
Is there a way we could get like emails, or is it we can just get in contact through themed attraction, correct? Like the website, we can all like reach out, all that information's on there.
I don't know if there's a preferred way that Nathan would like to manage, but all that works, yeah.
Okay. I mean, I was just wondering for like you guys, because I know a lot of times it's easier with like just email, but I haven't quite scoped out the website yet. So I don't know if there's an easier way to do that.
So one suggestion would be, oh, sorry, Jason.
I was just to say, I don't mind. If people contact me directly, I'm fine with that.
I was also going to say, connect with people on themedattraction.com and connect with people on LinkedIn. That's an easy way to do it. But I'm just going to say this one thing real quick. As a faculty member, you have a very rare opportunity to get connected to people in the industry that you don't have in other industries. This is actually very rare. So take advantage of it. And so even for this time right now, like you've got some very amazing panelists and judges in the room. So here's an opportunity to ask some really great questions to them, not just about the competition, but about the industry.
Well, and what is not rare though, Christian just mentioned, we're struggling ourselves with language competition. I mean, showcase. No, I mean, networking. This is a very unique for this industry, but it's not unique in other industries. So live theater, for example, I just put the link in there. They have a design showcase East and West Coast every year where students from this half of the country and that half of the country go and set up tables and show their work. So for theater folks, show lighting design, costume design, set design. So it is kind of the norm in other industries that you showcase your work. So if you want to poke around a little bit into what some other parallel industries do in this showcase space to inspire you, themed entertainment is just sort of, this is the first time something like this has happened for us, but it's not a brand new idea. It's a proven concept to get your work in front of cool people.
I wanted to ask a question that's not necessarily about the competition. So hello, my name is Deliverables. My question is basically, I suppose, directed to everyone who wants to sort of have a go at it as well. I was wondering what your workflow is in terms of how do you approach a project. I'm currently working on a walkthrough experience for my thesis, for instance, and I've started with hand sketching, mood boards, this and that, and I'm moving towards drafting, and I'm going to get into 3D modeling. But what are some of those elements that you've seen in student portfolios that really stick out to you? And what are some of the softwares and workflows you would recommend for someone doing, for instance, a walkthrough experience like me, or any experience for that matter that has a themed entertainment aspect to it? So, and it's directed to everyone. Anyone can take it, really.
Wow. Not a short answer, right?
Well, and also keep in mind that this showcase is asking you to do all the things. None of us do all the things. We're on giant teams. So the workflow for an individual would be different than a workflow for an entire project. So you want to make sure and showcase the work in your language. You know, if you're a mechanical engineer, the language of your industry is different than the language of a concept artist. I'm going to share with you this really great resource from Catapult. So there's Imagineering in a Box, which is on Khan Academy. which sort of walks you through Imagineering's design process. Catapult is a UK themed entertainment company, and they have a similar competition for little tiny kids, like 3rd and 4th graders. And the workflow that they have in this competition is solid. Like, it goes through all the actual necessary steps. So if you're concerned about soup to nuts for the industry, this is a great resource. And also, I just really appreciate any pitch done in felt. But think about your specialization and the workflow for that specialization.
And for
It's
someone
also
who's the emotional equivalent of a 3rd and 4th grader, I appreciate that.
I was just going to tag on to what MK said, and even though you may be sitting firmly in a discipline, or as I always like to say, you break it into 2 groups, technical and non-technical, of which there are dozens and dozens and dozens of disciplines and roles within there. It's a great opportunity to learn the language of all of those team members that you will eventually be working with, but may not have access to now. So to the degree possible, if you're an engineering student, work like crazy to understand how to communicate with creatives, because the better you're able to do that, the better you'll enjoy the projects that you're working on, the better product that you'll have, and vice versa. If you're creative, learn to speak technical language, understand how to interact with those individuals, and you'll have a lot more fun, right? So I don't know. I can take a swing at the process. It's definitely not something that's there's not really a shorthand to it, but the process typically always starts with an idea, right? Wouldn't it be great if, or wouldn't it be cool if? Sometimes that's tagged to an IP. I think somebody had mentioned Batman earlier. I know Jason and I have had these conversations for so many years. Wouldn't it be cool if we had a James Bond attraction? Wouldn't it be cool? So it kind of starts, I think, like that. Many times it can come from a client. We need to reach this demographic. We need to increase by this many gate clicks. And sometimes that client business requirement is pretty specific. You still have room to create within that, but there's a couple of different ways. Larger companies, legacy brands like Disney, Universal, Merlin, et cetera, those brands are large enough. They constantly have incredibly talented people like MK in an R&D group that's constantly working on ideas. So for your process, if you as a team land on what you think is a good story, a good draw, a good character, a good theme, and that doesn't mean painting something green. Theme is meaning to the story, rags to riches, good versus evil, it's a theme, it's meaning. If you have something like that, it's just starting at the big mouth of the funnel and narrowing it down to exactly the best way to represent that. Some companies decide on the best new roller coaster that Intamin or Vekoma is releasing that year. They buy it, they paint it purple and slap the name of a superhero on it. And that's the degree of theming that they take. That's not bad. It's just that's the way some companies do it. Other companies that are really interested in delivering story, once they find out what type of theme they're telling, what kind of story they're telling, they then decide on the actual mechanism of telling that story. What's the best thing? Is it a roller coaster? Is it a simulator? Is it a walkthrough? Is it a flume ride? What's the best medium for delivering this story to guests? So usually, and I think the judges hopefully would come down on at least similar feelings on this. A lot of times we look at students' work and you can realize right away they love this ride and they're trying very hard to make a story around why it would be really cool to use this technology. And not a bad idea if the two fit seamlessly. If they don't fit and it's like a record scratch, the guests will think that too, right? So once you've nailed that, then it literally is about exploring it. How do we do it? How do we make it work? Do we need 3 or 4, this is very detailed. Do we need 3 or 4 of these to get the number of people through? And then you throw a whole bunch of other people in a long amount of time to it. But I think the very first section that I mentioned, there's probably the length that you'll go to produce that. Don't make it bigger than it needs to be, and don't make it smaller than it needs to be. You don't have to boil the ocean. It just needs to be a really solid concept.
And following up on that a little bit, it's it's a two-way conversation in more ways than one. Like MK and Theron both touched on this. Like at Imagineering, for example, sometimes the idea would originate within Imagineering, and we would get passionate about it, and then it became a matter of getting a park somewhere to pay for it if it answered one of their needs. And then the flip side of that is the operation coming to the creative group saying, we really need this. You know, like Splash Mountain is a perfect example. You know, Dick Nunes, who was head of the parks group at the time, said, we really want a log flume ride. And Imagineering was like, well, we don't just install log flume rides because it's cute. You know, we need to have a valid reason to do it. And then, you know, Tony Baxter said, oh, well, that would be a really great vehicle for the Brer Rabbit, Brer Fox, and Brer Bear characters. So that was kind of the two sides meeting in the middle because it answered a need the park had. And then on the creative side, sometimes it's, hey, as someone who originated as a writer, I tend to be passionate about this, but it's like the idea should come first and then you figure out how to do it. But then on the other side, someone from MK in the R&D group or the ride group might say, hey, look what we can do, you know, and look what we have. And then the creative side would be like, oh, that'll help me with something I've got going on. So again, it's this constant two-way conversation between the creatives and the operator, and then the story folks and the technical folks. It's always this back and forth kind of synergy between the two.
And there are resources out there to help you along this path. You know, we, particularly in the Western Civ, like we don't do a great job of defining what is story. Is it once upon a time and the pages turn, or as Theron had mentioned, it's sort of man versus nature. I have two pretty good resources, one from John Hench called Why Disneyland is Good for You, and one from Joe Rohde on the power of story and theme, neither of which this chat window will let me drag and drop into it for you. So that's your first networking assignment. Reach out to me and ask for those badly scanned PDFs from the 70s. And I will send those both to you as a starting point.
70s, that's awesome.
1974, the New West magazine, Why Disneyland is Good for You.
Got to be something newer out there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Though, MK, it's like, it's funny that because we call it theme park, themed entertainment, and yet that word is misused like 98% of the time. I got to attend a Joe Rohde presentation one time on what theme truly is. And I left this hour-and-a-half session going, I gotta go back to school or take some night classes, because he really nails what a theme is. And Theron touched on it too. It's rags to riches. It's this, it's that. It's not, oh, we're gonna paint it green and call it the Riddler coaster.
Put some theme on that.
Yeah, and really, like Western is not a theme. Adventure is not a theme. It's really trickier than most people think, and it's just kind of a misnomer.
One of the things that I believe this came from Rohde that stuck with me most of my career was, in fact, I just released a class on this. It's basically using story to deliver business objectives. And that usually catches people, especially the creatives, like, you know, knuckle biter, what? Writing and business? That's just wrong. But the reality of that is so smart, because if you envelop very specific elements of your project in story, it becomes the entire framework for the entire project. So your client immediately buys into the story, right? So the three elements I always use is the brand, the audience, right? Because every brand has an audience, and the business objectives. If you take those three elements, encapsulate them in a story that uniquely delivers those three things, the client will buy into it. So then in 3 years, when you're building something and you're having an argument about what benches or garbage cans to buy, which you will have, and you want to put this type of a bench in there or this range of bench, and the client is saying, yeah, but we can save $2 if we do this, you know, then what you'll go back to is, remember the story that we agreed to that delivers these key things for you really leads us in this direction. That's why it's so critical. Otherwise, story is just this bumper sticker that gets slapped onto the idea, and nobody takes it serious on the end, right? And Jason knows this, right? This happens all the time. Unless you really integrate your story and it's a reason for doing it, it's too easy for the CFO to say, you know, let's shave off a few bucks. That's, you know, story stuff that the creative guys came up with. It needs to be more core and more central to what you do. Then it's inseparable.
And what Theron's saying makes perfect sense, because when you think of it in terms of applying story to business, story can be applied to anything. And it makes total sense when you think of what story is in the whole history of humanity. story came about for us to make sense of and contextualize our own lives in a way, and that's in addition to escapism and all of these other things, that's ultimately what it does. It's a vehicle to kind of make sense of the human experience, and it's applicable anywhere, just like a lot of us have come to realize all of life is theater, to one extent or another. It's all, there's a lot to be applied in every area of existence, with what we do. And to Theron's point, it's like, you will get into an argument about a trash can, because like if you go to the Magic Kingdom and go into Liberty Square, there are these standard trash cans that have these great metal medallions affixed to them. Those medallions cost a lot of money, but they also contribute to the art of the theme show. I had somebody, this was in my early days at Universal Entertainment, when I was really trying to bring more story to these haunted house experiences at Halloween Horror Nights. And I had a guy who just came in to head up the art department. He came from Vegas, so I was already kind of, oh boy. And in a meeting full of people, he goes, I don't understand, the importance. What is it with all this story stuff? And I just looked at him in front of a room full of people. I said, it's the one thing that separates us from Chuck E. Cheese. And he just literally goes, I get it. Okay, you sold me. But that's really what it boils down to. Theron mentioned earlier, and again, not to disparage any one company, but like, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you would see Six Flags literally just install a black roller coaster, just black steel, slap the Batman logo on it, and it's the Batman coaster. And it's like, that's kind of what we're talking about. And not every company is going to have the pockets of a Disney or a Universal, and obviously you do what you can. But there's, that's the scale of themed entertainment and storytelling in the real world.
We could riff for quite a long time, actually, about how disparaging the actual owners of the IP treat some of this stuff, right? You and I go back to, I can't believe the Jim Henson Company licensed the Muppets to sell pizza. I mean, yeah. Really? Yeah. That's horrible. So anyways, DC Comics should have never licensed Batman for a black iron roller coaster. Anyways, I digress.
Cody asked the question a bit further back in the chat here. With the major players in the industry moving to freelance and third-party design firms, what advice would you have for someone who wants to start a design firm, specifically getting contracts and stuff? One of the things that I've seen a surge in, just since the pandemic, is a lot of companies springing up who don't actually tell you what they do. They're just really smart. They're smart thinkers. And it's really hard to get a job without proof. You need to have evidence of your expertise. That sounds silly. That is literally the easiest way to get a contract, to say, oh, you're looking for somebody who can do finishes for swimming pools. Here is my portfolio of finishes for swimming pools. I'm super smart and can advise you. Nobody's looking for that.
That's a great point, because like one of the things in the times I've been in a hiring position, which has been on and off over the years, if I had a nickel for every person who's coming to say, well, I'm just a great idea person. I have a lot of ideas. I'm like, well, my mom has a lot of ideas too. You have to have a way to communicate them, to share them. And it ultimately, if you have talent, it doesn't matter if you're going to communicate them with the written word or a painting or a graphic design or this or that, or a portfolio of beautiful sculpture. You just have to have a way of communicating your art and your passion. And that may sound obvious and intuitive, but I've discovered that it isn't. I think it relates to what MK's saying, that you gotta sort of walk the talk, and it's not enough to just say, well, I have a lot of ideas. I have a lot of good ideas. And a good idea not shared isn't any better than a bad idea. So just make sure you're able to communicate what you can do.
I like to steer that conversation in, because I don't ever want to tell a 19-year-old, there's no such job, not for you, not for anyone. There's no such job as idea guy. Instead, what I say politely is, can you point to somebody who does what you think you want to do? And then we'll talk about their career path. Jason is very often mentioned in that conversation. He's a little bit more famous than the rest of us because he's published books. So he's a name that people know.
That's
Joe Rohde.
Sword, by the way.
Everybody wants to be Joe Rohde. And I say, great, here's how he got that job. He did this, he did this, he did this, he did this. But if you can't point to somebody, maybe what you're after doesn't exist. So think about what the path is to where you want to go, to make some sort of reasonable steps in that direction that'll make you happy.
The way that I coach students a lot is really put your effort into what you really enjoy doing. Right now, that might be a wide range of things. I get a lot of questions about, can a jack of all trades, find a place in the industry? And generally, the answer is yes. But you're going to get hired for a particular subject matter expertise. That's just the reality. And once you're in the door, that's when you get the opportunity to do all that Jason and MK were talking about. You may have fantastic ideas, but if you can't communicate them well because you haven't researched how to communicate with all the various disciplines and roles, then your ideas won't go very far. Most of the progression that happens within an organization is because people really like working with you, because you add value. You're a team player. You are solution oriented. You don't suck all the air out of the room when you walk in. I mean, there's plenty of time for that, right, to get famous and do that. But the reality is you're going to get hired for a subject matter expertise. You might as well make that something that you really love, because then you'll be really good at it and you'll get noticed. And the rest of it is you can maneuver throughout the organization. A lot of the work that I do and I try to do with everybody is give them a very big picture level of the whole industry. That way it's like a roadmap. It's so complex, more layers than an onion, and it's extremely difficult, and nobody teaches that really well in school, at least the ones that I've been a part of. So understanding that big process, that big organization will help you navigate through it once you do get your foot in the door.
And Andrew asks here, he's asking is, what's the secret discipline that I should study? Because it's hard to fill, and then I'll be the one that you hire, is his secret question here. And that's interesting, because there's really no discipline that our industry is looking for that is impossible to fill because the talent doesn't exist. One of the biggest challenges realistically nowadays is, particularly folks with tech skills, other industries will pay you double or triple. So the talent absolutely exists. It's just we're an industry that can't afford to pay you what Google can pay you. So there's not really, if only we had somebody who could make armor by hand. Those people exist. We can find those people.
I feel like there's a synthesis between what MK is saying and what Theron is saying, in that if you can demonstrate what you can do and get in the room, because I've had this happen with many, many, many team members, like I could find a graphic designer or a concept designer or an art director, or you name the discipline, who's, in addition to their skill set, is also amazing in the room, as we say, and a great conceptual thinker. What I found is those talents will come out. I mean, like, using myself as an example, I always tell people, try to match up your passion with something you're good at. So in my case, I never set out to be a writer. It just happened to be something I could do. And then I realized early on, when I was a lot younger, that, oh, this is a way for me into the industry. Because I always assumed I couldn't be an Imagineer because I wasn't an artist, an engineer, or an architect. But then when I discovered that I could get in through writing, that was my moment where I matched something I had a passion for with something that I was good at. And then once I got in the door, I was able to expand and start producing and directing, and ultimately creative directing. But it all tied back to that initial kind of gateway discipline.
And if you ask yourself, how do I tell stories with my chosen field, right? How do I tell stories with buildings as an architect? How do I tell stories with landscape architecture as a horticulturist? And there are some folks who absolutely do not thrive in this industry. We have struggled a lot with military designers, world-class designers, right? They literally make rockets that go to the moon. They understand tight tolerances, but it is baffling to them as to why you would need to wrap story around that. What's wrong with gray rivets? And so if you think about anybody from Detroit, right? If you've designed a Mustang or a Corvette, you understand high performance and story or sex appeal. So ask yourself, I'm a whatever, how do I tell story with whatever? You'll much easier find your insertion points, and you'll be much happier, right?
I have to sign off. I'm on to another call, but I sure have enjoyed talking with all of you guys, and it's been amazing. And I look forward to taking a look at all of the projects that you submit.
Hi, Theron.
I actually wanted to ask a question to Jason, if that's okay. Talking about story, that's an aspect of theme entertainment design that I really do enjoy. But oftentimes, whenever I'm creating my portfolio, if it's too text heavy, that's a big comment every time. If your architectural designs or whatever it is, if there's too much text, that becomes a problem. And part of that problem is, I'm trying to tell the story, I'm trying to keep it sort of balanced, but people oftentimes say, I don't know, no one's going to read that part. So what were some tips and tricks when you started off with writing that you applied during your job research that allowed you to sort of show your sort of writing skills, I will say?
No, that's a great question, because when you think of writers, you think of writing samples, and those can be a double-edged sword, because in my career, I've received samples like somebody submitted a spec script for The Big Bang Theory, and I'm kind of like, all right, well, this is themed entertainment, but I read it and I'm like, oh, she's really funny, actually. So with writing and story, beyond the obvious example of writing samples, I'll give you the best example from my own life, and it was literally 2 weeks ago. I'm in the process of talking to SCAD about potentially teaching there, and in addition to the resume and the application, it calls for a portfolio, as most artistic institutions would. And I'm like, well, I don't have a portfolio. I've historically been a writer or a creative director, so I don't have a portfolio in the classic sense. And what the school said was, oh, well, then basically, and I'm paraphrasing, but I'm going to submit the equivalent of an illustrated biography. So like a Word document of however long that through text basically says, oh, I did this and this and this and this, and illustrate it with either concept art that I've directed or still photography of the finished product, because ultimately that is what we're all creating. And some disciplines have a more obvious byproduct that can be put into a portfolio that looks nice than others, because no one's going to sit and read my treatment for the new Fantasyland. It's like, so that was just one example that kind of opened, actually it was my suggestion to them. I said, well, what if I did kind of an illustrated bio? And he was like, oh, that would really work, because it's not a portfolio, but it's something comparable for somebody with my background. And ultimately, I don't know that there's any absolute right answer, because I've received enough submissions that were kind of diverse in the way that they were put together. And if there's kind of a running theme of what we've been talking about today, is ultimately do what's best for you. And you're in the best position to define what that is. You know how to show yourself off and present yourself in the way you want to be presented and want to be perceived. And then there's also that element of, tailor that to the job that you're going for, whatever that means, and if that means artwork or graphic design or photography of the finished product with guests enjoying it, just think through what is going to show you off in the best light and really communicate what you ultimately do.
Thank you very much.
It looks like Nathan is back as host. We have about 3 more minutes before he wanted us to wrap this. Anything we can say or do on the way out? Nathan's in charge of us, and he just went back to the other room.
Do you think you guys have any intern opportunities that you guys suggest that we as a students to go for?
Are you familiar with the themed entertainment jobs job board?
Not really, but I'll check it out. I think I get it. Thanks.
Many of us have recently become very acquainted with the themed entertainment jobs board.
Yes, some of us. Yeah, so COVID has taken last estimates about 500,000 jobs from our industry. Sports, live entertainment, Broadway themed entertainment. So there are far fewer internships than there used to be. This themed entertainment job board, which is run by 2 volunteers, one on the East Coast and one on the West Coast, internships from all over the industry would be listed in there. I just saw, I think it was Universal in Florida posted some internships for this summer, but you had to already reside in the state of Florida. And that is absolutely a COVID restriction. That's not legally, federally labor law wise, but in times of COVID, they don't want to bring people from other locations. So weird things are opening up. I just saw Illumination Studios is offering a storyboard training program for an intern that is remote. So this summer isn't going to be great. This fall is going to be much better in terms of internships. But keep your eyes peeled on resources like this because when they do become available, they're posted there immediately.
And one thing I've observed, which is great for you guys, is being a gentleman of a certain age. I can say that when I was starting out, there weren't nearly the internship opportunities that there are now. So just know that the industry, I feel, is far more open and has a lot more available at that sort of entry level than in previous decades, certainly. So I do think the future is brighter in that regard.
And also look at opportunities to get more experience in your core skill set, right? Like if you're hoping for a job as a fountain designer in themed entertainment and those aren't happening right now, you're a plumber, right? Water through pipes. There's lots of places to get solid expertise in your chosen field. Might not be themed entertainment, but the foundational skill set you can reinforce really well. You know, since the time of Cleopatra, we've had themed entertainment and no degrees in it. So people in this industry came from other universes. So at a time like this with unprecedented times, feel free to hop to another industry and get yourself some solid experience. I worry about the folks who are like, I'm just going to wait it out. I'm just going to move to Orlando and do nothing for 2 years. And because one day they're going to pick up the phone and call me. That's a terrible plan. Get yourself solid experience, whatever, customer service, design, mechanics, just so that you get some good work under your belt that you can then apply to your dream job when it opens back up.
And beyond working, it's like, some of the best advice I got about writing is incredibly basic. And it's from Stephen King, a novelist. He said, if you want to be a writer, read a lot and write a lot. If you want to be a painter, paint a lot. If you want to be an artist, sketch a lot, draw a lot. There are absolutely no restrictions on that. So practice your craft, whatever that is, even if it's just for you in the interim. Just keep those skills sharp and just don't stop doing what you're doing.
One of the things that made me so happy to see this Mardi Gras season, New Orleans didn't have their famous parades and their floats, which are phenomenal themed experiences. Anyone see what they did instead? Totally organically grew up from the grassroots.
The houses.
They had Yardi Gras. Yeah, they decorated houses, each individual. And some were like, clearly my fourth grader was the design director and others were people who had money and show control. But the community took it over and they did Yardi Gras and they celebrated Mardi Gras in a safe way in everyone's yard. And it was sort of walkthrough experiences. So when the opportunity you want isn't there, invent it.
It sounds like there's a little bit of a pause happening right now. So we've just ended the other breakout room. We are going to try to have, knock on wood, hopefully technology did not fail us and it's all being recorded. So that if you miss something in one room, you can go to the other room. But I think it's probably time to wrap up with the last 1 or 2 questions and then we'll adjourn and we'll make that available online for you.
I have a question for Jason.
Yep.
Hey, just a quick question, Jason. I've heard you talk a couple times. I know you've written a number of books before. And one of the things I've never gotten to ask you is there's no books, like there's one book on Universal Creative. Would you write a book about Universal Creative and what would that be about?
We almost did. I had the outline fully fleshed out, ready to go. Universal Creative wants it. It was actually Tom Williams, the head of Universal Parks and Resorts, who didn't want to do it. And I don't know if it's because it's a combination of they don't want to call attention to themselves in that way. And meanwhile, marketing's like, no, we do. That's our Imagineering. We need to do what Imagineering's doing. And then part of it, which I've never understood, is, well, we don't want to tell people how we do it. And it's like, because I even got that a little on my first book on the Haunted Mansion. And I was like, it's not an instruction manual. You're not going to take a book any of us write and go out and build your own Haunted Mansion. But that's the short answer. It's like, it has been pitched and advocated for, but at the top, they don't want to do it, at least not now. I think it'll happen eventually, but that is the inside story there. Question for Jason, is it better to start off as a Jungle Cruise skipper or Goofy? Well, I was Pluto, so I find your question offensive. But it's like, a Jungle Cruise is just one of those great first jobs to have. I mean, Tony Baxter was an ice cream scooper. John Lasseter was a Jungle Cruise skipper. I did Jungle for one summer and then part of another, and then went into entertainment. But I think the best answer to that question is, even if you get a job at a regional park, the opportunity to see how these things operate and what it takes to put on this kind of show every day is invaluable, because you're going to bring that knowledge with you to your design work. And especially as someone who's spent a number of years at some of the various field offices where we're much more closely aligned and partnered with the park, you're always going to be served well by that kind of operational knowledge and expertise, because if you create something that can't be operated efficiently, cost effectively, whatever, the company is probably not going to do it. So any opportunity you have to see how these things run on the ground is something to pursue. Although I would still say Jungle Cruise skipper.
I have to apologize for that. I listened to the podcast last week and remembered, I was like, was it Pluto or Goofy? I think it was Goofy.
I wasn't really offended. You have to get up very early in the morning to offend me, by the way.
I thought it was also interesting that there were a couple of other Plutos that you had done other projects with. So
people of average height go far in this industry. You don't want to be too tall, I found. And a full head of hair is overrated as well.
Well, and also I worked for 10 years in hospitals and nursing homes. It was dirty, filthy, hard work, but I paid for college and grad school in cash because I could work whenever. It never occurred to me that that would be valuable, but I have a subject matter expertise in mostly male quadriplegic patients was my expertise. That is incredibly useful when you're designing theme park attractions. My lens, I go in with accessibility as my lens accidentally. So don't discount any experience you have adding value at the end of the day.
Right.
Guest service is guest service. I see a hand again. I don't know what that means.
Melody.
Yes, hello everyone. By the way, I'm so sorry. I know that my background, I'm currently at work, but thankfully my manager is super, super kind. Like, he's very supportive of me and, my goal and my dream of what I want to do. So he allows me to attempt to multitask, which is what I'm trying to do. But I took a little quick break to come out here to ask a few questions. I do have 2 questions. One question for MK, just because I did hear you talk about accessibility really quickly. It's a huge passion of mine. And I think that from a creative standpoint, I don't, now correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not very familiar with most people in the industry yet, but I just don't see creative mindsets or creators that have any sort of disability or I mean, like I said, correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't mean to be insensitive to anyone.
Well, part of that is because, except for Jason, we're not famous, right? Like you don't actually see a lot of the creators. Representation wise, our industry is terrible, but it is getting much better. And part of that is organic, and part of that is a very specific outreach effort for better and wider voices across the board. But and also a lot of the work that we deal with is legacy. You've got a attraction that was $200 million to install. You have to be real intentional to how are you going to redesign that to make it more accessible. My favorite is the train at Space Mountain that goes off the track for disabled guests to log in and gets back on. That was a very expensive construction endeavor. So we're getting better. There's a long way to go, both in terms of accessibility for our guests and having those voices in the conversation in the first place. But those voices are there. Not enough of them, but those voices are there.
To follow up on that, we just had a board meeting today. I'm in the TEA's Diversity and Inclusion Board. So today was my first meeting on board. Now that I've heard you mention that, what are initiatives that I could bring to the board and, to other committees that I'm a part of to try to raise that awareness and seek out those individuals? Because I really want to bring them to the forefront. I love the underdogs and just people in general. So
There's my email. Email me and I will deluge you.
Oh, yes, please.
With some
Thank you
really
so
great
much.
resources, people who are doing great stuff in these spaces.
Thank you so much. And I do have one last question for everyone. I am currently going for mechanical engineering, so I do have that sort of technical mindset, but I also want to say I'm quite creative, not artistically, but just I imagine all the time. What would be a great piece of advice for anybody that does think more on the technical aspect or the technical side to work with people that are very creative? I know that budget's a huge thing. I myself am a budget person, but apart from budget, apart from anything that you would think that somebody with a technical mindset finds restrictive, what can we do to break those barriers and to be more understanding and collaborate better?
Well, if you get into ride engineering, that is extremely technical, and you're working side by side with the creative people and also figuring out, disability challenges. So, I would suggest, did you say that you have a mechanical engineering background, or that's what you're in, or?
Yes, that's what I'm finishing up my drafting degree now. In fact, that's my current role here in my office. I'm a drafter, but I am going for mechanical engineering.
Yeah, so there's a lot of interface with mechanical engineering, not only in ride design or ride control, but also show action equipment and things like that, like the switch track that MK was talking about. Was an ingenious piece of mechanical engineering that interfaced with, ride control and all sorts of logic control. So the silos are not that separated, at least at, Disney. And I don't imagine anywhere. The mechanical engineering has to be done side by side with creative people.
Yeah, I would say creative and technical aren't mutually exclusive terms.
That's right.
And some of the most creative people I've ever worked with are the engineers, people who are much smarter than I am, who figure out how this stuff works and bring something completely unique to them to the table. And it's every bit as much a creative discipline as a creative discipline is. So just think of it that way, and think of yourself that way.
Absolutely.
Melody, I was going to add as well. There's a really good friend of mine, and I'm sure everybody else on the call would agree with me. Lenny Larson. He speaks at the TEA all the time. He's a great resource and a really great guy. So I just added his name into the chat. So just feel free to look him up. He's all over YouTube, and he talks about disabilities in the theme entertainment industry, and just a great resource.
Thank you all so much. Yes, thank you.
All right, we do want to respect everyone's time today, especially our gracious judges. A couple have had to go already. However, I just want to let you know that we will have, and we've committed to giving each team and each individual feedback, and also have having another Q&A sort of mixer session towards the end. So this is not the end. We'll have more. The schedule is that the opening of the project submission will start tomorrow and will go for about 30 days. The judges will then have 2 weeks to score those projects. The dates are listed on the showcase. And so about May 15th-ish. And then we'll have the results posted prior to the end of the school year. And we'll also have several, probably 2 or 3 breakout sessions where each team can get some individualized feedback. Again, check that page that says Student Showcase for the updated. We'll update that as times need to flex. But that should be fairly comprehensive. in terms of our timing. So we want to get everyone feedback and all the results out before the end of the school year, which should be around the 30th of June or May 1st, or sorry, 30th of May or June 1st-ish. So that's the timeline for us. So I think we have time for one more question and then we will go. Does anyone want to take that?
There's one in the chat that I didn't hear get addressed from Chance. You want to ask that, Chance?
Oh, I saw that. I mean, my gosh, model shop, you know, there's absolutely a place for that skill set. In fact, it's one of the foundational disciplines of Imagineering. So, and people have gotten jobs by walking in off the street to 1401 Flower Street with models they built. So absolutely a viable skill. Even if you don't wind up going into model making as your profession, if it's something you're good at, it can convey your idea. Tom, was it Tony who came in with the Mary Poppins model, or was it Tom Fitz? Somebody came in with an elaborate model they constructed.
They both came in with models. Tony came in with a marble, kind of a marble maze, gravity, you know, coaster kind of thing with marbles. And it might have been Tom who did, I think he did the Mary Poppins attraction, but others, you know, as well. And it really is a key part, you know, when there's kind of two areas where everything comes together, at least at Disney, and one is the model shop and the other is the show set design department. That's where everything kind of is figured, you know, discovered. A lot of discoveries are made in the process of creating the models and kind of going back and forth between the show set design and the models. That's where, you know, the ride, the timing, the mechanics, all of it is kind of integrated in those two areas where the discoveries and you know, you want to catch something then while it's in model or while it's in show set. So very, very valuable skill. I had never built a model before until I started at WED and I was in show set design and discovered that I needed to sometimes build a model, a quick paper model to prove something out or to prove something would work or fit. So having the skill, whether or not you even go into it or not, is a good thing to have.
I showed up with a model, but it was Christy Brinkley and I was asked to leave.
Right.
There's a timely reference for everyone.
Yeah.
Brielle had a question, how desired are artists who make physical models now that 3D modeling is on the rise? This is weird coming from someone who just left a place where the model shop was disbanded, but again, you can't really go by COVID. I would argue that you could have the greatest 3D model in the world, but there's still never going to be a substitute for those dimensional models. You know, the ones that you show off to investors or the ones that you plop Walt in an office chair and ride him around. So I don't think it's a dead art form by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, having worked on,
they're going back to it. I said, look at film, they're going back to it. You know, they got tired of the shiny artifice of some of the CG. So things like Star Wars and some of the other big franchises are going back to physical models.
Well, also the benefits of physical models, especially in the very preliminary stage where you can quickly bang out a paper model. Paper meaning you're using illustration board or Bristol board or something like that, or sometimes literally paper. You know, on the car, Radiator Springs Racers, that was the first 100% simulated attraction that WDI had ever done. But the guys that were building those worlds couldn't have done it if we weren't building our little paper models to do kind of proof of concept first to see if, you know, if there was enough space in the room. And, you know, if you try to do it all in 3D, it's going to take longer. So you want to do, you know, you want to use a little bit of both, whatever is going to get you to the finish line and get you to decisions, because it's all about decision making. And so sometimes, many times, a paper model or a more elaborate model is will get you to the decision quicker.
And a related story, Tom, who was the guy who literally figured out Soren with his erector set at home?
Oh yeah, that was Mark Sumner.
Yeah. I mean, so again, it's you know, tinkering around with something that's physical and tangible, and he solved that the creative challenge of how to pull off that experience.
Right.
All right, thank you, everyone. Our other moderators have had to jump off, so I'm gonna go ahead and they've assigned me host privileges. I have the power. But again, we'll expect to hopefully build a little bit more community coming up. Thank you, MK, Jason, all the other judges, Tom and Freddie for helping host, Jesse. Again, my email I'm going to go ahead and put right here in the chat. So if you have any questions about how to upload anything, just let me know. And appreciate everyone's time, and we'll go ahead and sign off.
Thanks,
Thank you so
everybody.
much, everyone.
Good luck.
Okay. All right, bye now.
So much. Have a good time.
Thank you.
Thank you.